I welcome you to this lecture. That is the third in the uh, in the series related to history of Arabic literature. Today's lecture will be related to the early Islamic period. As we have seen, usually the period that is after Islam is usually context in the sequence of literary and language discourse that was inherited from the pre-Islamic period. There's one stage or one section which is known as the Mukhazram. Mukhazram period means, or the Mukhazram poets or the generation of the Mukhazramin means that they have found themselves in the pre-Islamic period and they continued in the Islamic period. So they were actually, they had brought up actually in two successive periods. There is the pre-Islamic and early Islamic, hence they are known as Mukhazram. There were many things that remained the same with the advent of Islam, and there were many other things that underwent changes. So early Islamic period in the context of time, it starts with the 610 and continues to 616. So it's approximately 50 years. And if this is with the that is when the Prophet Muhammad was crowned with or blessed with the prophethood. If the things are to be taken from the birth of Prophet Muhammad then it will be that is 570. So another 40 years would be added. Advent of Islam was something very significant in the history of humanity, but we are concerned with the history of Arabia because it made Arabic a language that became common legacy of the humankind. It was it metamorphosed into an international language, a language of the entire world that was assimilated by Islam, that witnessed the spread of Islam, the advent of Islam. Because Arabic is the official language of Islam, in the backdrop of the revelation, the Islamic revelation, that is the Quran being in Arabic, as well as language of Prophet Muhammad being Arabic. Prophet Muhammad was born in 570 and he died in the year 632, Christian era. His life is divided into two primary segments, that is the Meccan period, period related to Mecca, and the period related to Medina. The Meccan period happens to be between 570 to 622, and the Medina, well, it has been written over here, that is Madana, that is actually Medina period. (622 to 632) periods. It witnessed, it consisted of the early Islamic period also consists of the glorious caliphate, which that is Al-Khilafat al-Rashida, having companions of Prophet Muhammad namely Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Osman, and Hazrat Ali as the caliphs. The period related to Medina or Al-Hayat al-Madaniya, Al-Fatra al-Madaniya, consisted of transmission, social transmission, political transmission, There were a series of istives, was, which are part of the Sira literature. We'll not be very much concerned about them in this context of the history of Arabic literature. But regarding the wars that followed, especially Jang-e-Jamal, Siffin, and Karbala, they are worth mentioning because we'll be having a significant chunk of Arabic poetry and prose in the early Islamic period, as well as the Umayyad period that echoes these events. These events have played a very significant role in the social and political transformation. We have formation and transformation we have during the Umayyad times. Political poetry was a byproduct of this. For example, political poetry was byproduct of these divisions. Some theological disputes, debates between the Jabrites and Qadrites, etc. Khawarij, the Kharijites. They're primarily rooted in the divisions we find in the backdrop of Jamal, Siffin, and Karbala. So the very schism or al-khilafat, al-tawa'if, al-jama'at, al-firaq, al-islamiyya, this phenomenon is to be seen in the backdrop of Jamal, Siffin, Karbala. There were the polemics, the politics of the Jabrites, Qadrites, etc. The questions of or the issues of determinism and free will or determinism that emerged very prominently during the times of Hazrat Ali, especially, and that played very significant role in the formation of theological schools, leading to the Kharijite phenomenon, and at a later stage during the Abbasid times, into emergence of other theological groups, theological doctrines, chiefly that of Al-Mu'tazila. So that actually led to a sequence of thoughts and viewpoints, political positions, instances that stand as vital points of reference while studying the Arabic poetry and prose during the later Islamic, that is the Umayyad and Abbasid times especially. But they're deep-rooted in the society and culture that was in the early Islamic period. So the biggest thing that we must take note of as the students of Arabic language and literature is the impact of Quran and Hadith on Arabic language and literature. What was the impact, or what were the impacts, and how these impacts are represented in the structure, in philology and stylistics. So here 2 or 3 things are to be taken primarily and must be understood in right perspectives. The first thing is that language as such, and it was the Arabic, it was the standard language. Arabic remained Arabic as it remained so till the modern times. Of course, times plays certain roles. But regarding Arabic, it has been pointed out that the very paradigms of classicism and non-classicism, classical means very old, which is not relevant in modern perspectives, in modern times. These sort of things are not applicable. These parameters are not applicable in regard to Arabic. That's why the language structure as it was, language structure of Arabic as it was during the pre-Islamic period, it remained so till the modern times, till date. That's why, as it has been referred to earlier, we still enjoy, read, analyze, celebrate the pre-Islamic poetry, muallaqat, whether it is muallaqat or shura sa'alik or the poetry of other groups. So Arabic remained Arabic in its grammatical structure. The etymological parlances remained the same. Well, in the backdrop of some pragmatics, some as relates as is related the pragmatic perspectives, we can find that there are certain things which took place, and they mark the points of departure, like the emergence of new terms, new philology that were given by the religion that was Islam. Islam as a faith. Islam as a faith has its own concepts related to worldview, to divinity, to prophethood, and the very structure of Sharia jurisprudence, like ibadat, muamalat, etc., as well as some pure theological perspectives related to the concept of God and Godhead, nubuwwah, etc. So the things that were given by Islam related to the monotheistic projection of divinity, because before that we have the polytheism, it was the polytheistic. So then we have that sort of changes. So we have the emergence of new words, new phrases. But these phrases, these words were related to the core of Arabic. They were not taken from or borrowed from the other sources. What Islam did was that that chunk of philology that represented kufr and shirk, it practically didn't remain in vogue in practice, in practical uses, in the course of literary exercises that followed, whether in poetry or in prose, like the contents of shirk and kufr, for example, were replaced by the contents of tawheed and Islam, iman. It was simply replaced, but the terminologies remained because they formed the core of a language. If there are emergence of some terminologies, it doesn't mean that they are simply annihilating, killing the or erasing out of existence those terminologies that were in vogue and that constituted the core of that language. So it was not the case. Rather, they were simply pushed into like oblivion. They became the backbenchers. And what emerged in the front was the new terminology, the new projections, new terminologies, new phraseology, a segment of new phraseology and new terminology that was sourced from the Islamic worldview. There was another segment that remained as it is. There was another segment that remained as it is. It didn't undergo any change because, and that segment is related to a core, I call it the neutral, the secular, simply, something related to language, because language as such is secular. We can call it secular. It remains so. So the phraseology, the terminologies that didn't touch upon the ideological core of Islam or non-Islamic perspectives of Arabia before Islam, they remained as they are. There is the fourth segment. The fourth segment is related to what could be seen as, I project it as the auxiliary of language. Means it doesn't touch upon the ideological distinctions or canonics, ideological canonics. Rather something auxiliary related to common sense or like that. Like in some cases we find that Abdullah was of course modified into Abdullah. But what about Zaidul Khail? Zaidul Khail. Zaidul Khail was modified into Zaidul Khair. But again, what is to be seen is that it was necessary to modify Abdullah by Abdullah, but not so in the later case. Zaidul Khail, where Zaidul Khail is modified into Zaid al Khair. So these 4 points are to be kept in mind while talking about the impact of Quran and Hadith on Arabic language and literature. There are two other basic points which are to be kept in mind. The first is since Quran and Hadith, the revealed text, that is Quran, and sayings of words and deeds and affirmations of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which are known as Hadith, they are in prose. Therefore, prose became paramount with the advent of Islam. It became paramount. And the characteristics of the prose, the artistic components of prose, they remain as they are, because Quran was revealed in the very language that was spoken by Mudar, Lahjat Mudar, that was the standard Lahja. And this Lahja was represented by the Mu'allaqa, the pre-Islamic poetry. So only the difference lies in the poetry, in being a text, poetry or prose. As regards poetry, the scansion, the parameters of scansion, the rhyming patterns, the awzan, the buhur, all these remained as they were. They didn't undergo any change. This is the first thing. The second thing is that the pre-Islamic poetry, the genre we will having primarily consisted of the Madaih Nabawiyya, the elegy, the zajal, and general poetry. And in the domain of prose, we have oratory, the correspondence, companions of text, etc. The Rashidun Caliphate at its greatest extent under Uthman, under Khalifa, the third Khalifa Uthman, actually covered all of Arabia and a significant chunk of Persia, Anatolia, and Africa, as it can be seen in this perspective. So that goes to modern day Persia, all this region, part of Anatolia, that is Turkey, and from that we're finding these areas like Egypt and present Libya and Tunisia and some parts of Algeria and so. Well, the depiction of Battle of Qadisiyah, there are some references in the poetry and prose of that period of the Qadisiyah, which stands central to the conquest of the Persian territories. So in the Shahnameh of Firdausi, which was composed in 1614, things have been depicted like this. There are some ideological debates about the position of Islam, standpoint of Islam vis-a-vis poetry. Did Islam encourage poetry or it discouraged it? Here again, we'll be finding people's in two categories. The first category says that no, there were no such things. Rather, Islam as a new religion and religious culture and a language culture, coupled with the language culture of Arabic, it encouraged poetry. And it encouraged literature, including poetry. Only the thing is that since Islam was, as a religion and as an ideological entity, had to face, had to embark upon a social transformation, a religious transformation in Arabia, in the polytheistic Arabia, and turn it into monotheistic under the banner of Islam. Hence, anything that was against the serious business of society was not to be encouraged in toto by Islam. That's why the Quranic verse says, وَالشُّعَرَاءُ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ أَلَمْ تَرَوْا أَنَّهُمْ فِي كُلِّ وَادٍ يَهِيمُونَ وَأَنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَذَكَرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَانتَصَرُوا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا ظُلِمُوا وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. So, someone who takes this verse as something discouraging for poetry, he must note, as it has been rightly pointed out by the critics, by the analysts, that the Quran doesn't denounce categorically all forms of poetry. Rather, it denounces some specific forms of poetry that is in service of the astray, the negativity, the negative things, the aimlessness in society, in thought, in values, etc., which is categorized as al-ghay, the doers of which are known as al-ghawoon. So this is to be denounced. Only this point is to be denounced. This is actually encouraged by, supported by many instances of Islam, like Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, "Inna min ash-shi'r la-hikmah," which has been narrated by Sahih al-Bukhari. وأصدق كلمة قال شاعر كلمة لبيد على كل شيء ما خلا الله باطله, which is متفق عليه, a hadith narrated by Imam Bukhari and Muslim both. And Prophet Muhammad saying sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Hassan, "Hajihim wa Jibril ma'ak," where Prophet Muhammad is saying to Hassan that he should be using his power of poetry to support Islam, to denounce kufr, shirk, and to support Islam. He says that Jibril, the angel Gabriel, is with you. This is again muttafaq alayh. So this is also supported by Ibn Salam in his Taqat of al-Shura, who actually highlights that aspect. He says, which is very significant, that it was something like it was the actual situation, political situation, sociological situation prevailing at the time, that caused some pause to a specific section of poetry and poets, not all of the poetry and all of the poets. Then what's the difference between Ash-Shi'r al-Jahili and Ash-Shi'r al-Islami? As it has been pointed out, in terms of phraseology, in terms of vocabularies, the etymological aspects, as well as the scansion system, al-awzan, al-buhur, things remain the same. Only the difference that we have is emergence of some new terms, some new phrases, a segment of words, having the same etymology, The etymology was there, the root was there, only specific terms, out of which we find that some specific terms came. Like replacing Al-Uzza wal-Lat with Allah. إلى الله لا إلى العزى ولا اللات وخذه فتنجوه إذا كان النجاء وتسلموا لدى يوم لا ينجو وليس بمفلت من النار إلا طاهر القلب مسلم. As it is found in these two lines written by Bujair, composed by Bujair ibn Zuhair ibn Abi Sulma. The Islamic period is not very large. Islamic and early Islamic period. It's not very large, as we have seen. So it hardly consists of 50 years, or if we take it with the birth year of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as a starting point, then it will be just 90 years. So 50 or 90 years, it's not a big chunk of time. So in that we have Hassan ibn Thabit al-Ansari, Abdullah ibn Rawaha, Ka'b ibn Zuhair, Hutay'a, al-Hurqa, bint al-Nu'man, al-Khansa bint Tamadir, Asma bint Marwan, Qutayla ukht Nazir, etc. Qasidat Bana Su'ad is the foremost qasida as we have in this period. بان السعاد فقلبي اليوم متبول مطيم إسرها لم يفتى مقبول إن الرسول نور يستضاء به مهند من سيوف الله مسلول في عصبة من قريش قال قائلهم ببطن مكة لما أسلموا زالوا فما زال أنكاس ولا كشف عند اللقاء ولا ميل معازل. So it is very clear that as regards the typical Iskandarian system of Qasida, it remained the same. There's no difference. Even the hemistish, that is how the poet started the Qasida, it remained the same. That is, Bana Su'ad faqalbi al-yawm matbulu. It is significant because this Qasida, which is in praise of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it starts with Bana Su'ad. Means the poet just remembers. He starts his poem by remembering his beloved. So it might seem that this is something like Qasida Ghazaliyah. يعني هذا في الحقيقة يعني يتحول إلى خير شاهد للقول بأن البنية الأساسية للقصيدة العربية في سياقي الكلمات المفردات وكذلك في سياقي المضمون، يعني إنها لم تتغير. ف يعني البدء بالنسيب والتشبيب بقي كما كان في العصر الجاهلي. These lines of Hassan ibn Thabit al-Ansari are very famous from his qasida, that is عفت ذات الأصابع فالجواو. It contains 31 lines. ألا أبلغ أبا سفيان عني فأنت مجوف نخب هواء قل هجوت محمدا فأجبت عنه وعند الله في ذاك الجزاء أتهجوه ولست له بكف فشركما لخيركما فداء وأحسن منك لم تر قط عيني وأجمل منك لم تلد النساء خلقت مبرأ من كل عيب كأنك قد خلقت كما تشاء. So he was the very prominent Al-Hutayya. In the personality of Hutayya, we find some points of departure. That is, it was not like that in the advent of Islam, in the backdrop of the advent of Islam. It was Islam was the primary force that enforced all the do's and don'ts, even in the domain of thought or the literary culture. No. We do find some voices of dissent, voices of revolt. And these voices of dissent and revolt could be heard in some compositions of Al-Hutayya, like these first two lines, which are related to Harbul Ridda, the war of apostasy that was fought by Hazrat Abu Bakr أطعنا رسول الله ما كان بيننا فيا لعباد الله ما لأبي بكر أيورثنا بكرا إذا مات بعده وتلك لعمر الله قاسمة الظهر. In these two lines he just presents his resentment to things related to a choice of caliph in Islam. Alongside these lines of Zabarqan al-Badr, دع المكارم لا ترحل لبغيتها, which was said in Zabarqan al-Badrin, وقعد فإنك أنت الطاعم الكاسي. When he says ماذا تقول يا فراخ بذي مرخ حمر الحواصل لما الله شجر, this is again something that is to be projected as the points of departure. Then we have قصائد البردة. Then قصيدة خنساء أعيني جودا ولا تجمدا ألا تبكيان لصخر الندى. So these are different aspects related to the emergence of development of Arabic poetry, the modifications we do have, the changes we can envisage that actually occurred during the early Islamic period. With this, we conclude that lecture. It will be seconded by lecture related to the emergence of prose, development of prose during the early Islamic period. Thank you.